Hello, everyone. Apologies for the giant microphone chilling out over here. Hopefully it's not too annoying and distracting. I don't really like it there. I had it down below, right here, just above my keyboard, and then I realized during the Merchant Midnight Madness stream that I did a few nights ago that it was right above the keyboard. So every time I typed, it sounded like thunder. So we moved it. Anyway, thank you to the people who have followed lately. If you haven't yet, that really helps me out. Because first thing on Twitch is to get to 50 followers, then you become an affiliate. So we're at 18, which is really not that bad after 2 weeks. I don't think followers really matter other than that, but it does matter to me right now, both from the Twitch perspective as well as if you guys are following me, then that's cool. It means I'm doing something right. So that's actually a really nice sign that people are enjoying this and watching and getting something out of it. So I'd appreciate if you could do that. As always, thank you to the people who just talk to me about this, in the sense that whether you're giving me ideas, you're talking to me about the things that you guys have gone through, just tips on things that I might be able to talk about that you'd be interested in hearing and all that kind of stuff. One of the things that's really important to me is that this isn't just the Everclear show, right? I'm not trying to be a guru here. I would like to see this be a community where, I might be the one on camera leading the way here and talking about things and giving ideas and tips and all that kind of shit, but if you're not really legitimately making your life better and the lives of everyone around you better, then what's the point of this, right? So I think much like things I do in video games too, I really don't want this to just be a TV show where you guys, kind of watch me and it's I don't know if I'm really here making people feel good. I know people are resonating with some of the things I'm saying, but I watch and then that's my entertainment. I'm hoping this is a little bit more than entertainment. I'm hoping that this is something where people are becoming a bit more aware and conscious of these issues and how it affects them, how it affects the other people they know. And I think when you talk about trauma, when you talk about really deep healing, you ultimately have to arrive at forgiveness. And I've been thinking about talking about this one for a while. And the interesting thing is, unlike some of the other shows where, I have, I want to talk about these 5 practical things, right? It's kind of bothering me right now. Let's see if I can, there we go, it's a little better. I want to talk about these 5 practical things: reframing, reducing decision fatigue, this, that, the other thing. With this one, while I have some general ideas about where I'm going to go and a few things I want to mention and bring up, I think this is going to be just kind of seeing where this goes. And if you guys want to ask questions along the way, that's totally cool. But let's dive in. I mean, I think it's fair to say, just even by me, being not necessarily hesitant to talk about this, but just taking it slow and steady, that this is a topic that is significant. And I'll start off by talking about this. One of the most I don't know exactly the word to say. I'm not sure it's impactful. I'm not sure it's stunning. But one of the most intriguing things I think I've seen on TV happened during the Charleston church shooting back about 6 years ago. And I do actually have this pulled up on my other monitor. And just to refresh everyone's memory over here, this is the mass shooting carried out by Dylan Roof. He went into a church in South Carolina and killed, was it 9 people, I believe? And yes, 9, and then there was another one that was injured, so 10 total victims, 9 dead. Horrific, right? And the worst part was, aside from it being clearly straight up domestic terrorism, right? This and hate crime. He went and prayed with these people for a few days before he actually did it. He didn't just walk in out of the blue. He actually was attending, I believe, a few days before. I may be wrong about that detail, but I'm pretty sure that was the case. And as they showed the TV and what was going on with the court proceedings as his trial was going on, there was one grandmother or mom of someone who died, and she was breaking down, crying, about the pain and the anguish and the suffering that she was going through. And in one of the most striking moments, I think, as she's just pouring out her pain and suffering, she started just wailing out, "I forgive you. I forgive you." If we had heard something like, "I hate you. I'm so glad you're gonna, rot in jail for the rest of your miserable fucking life," sure. I mean, we'd accept it and be like, "Yeah, I feel you." But here she is screaming, "I forgive you," after losing someone so dear and close to her, as she is looking at the murderer and talking to him and talking about what she lost in her pain and all that kind of stuff. What an incredible thing. Truly, what an incredible thing to be able to do that. And again, as far as the I hope you burn in hell, you're gonna rot in jail for the rest of your life, we expect that out of a 20-something-year-old, 30-something, 40-something. This was obviously a grandmother age. I don't know if who she lost was a grandchild or just a child, to be clear. And I think I'm going to switch my glasses to reduce some of this glare going on right now, because I just see, it's like I got Christmas lights going on here. But anyway, she's quite She was easily in her 60s or 70s. That's better. What an incredible amount of wisdom. That in that moment, the best thing she could have done was scream and let out and truly forgive that person. Because forgiveness is not just saying, I forgive you. It's actually fucking meaning it. And this is where we get tripped up a lot. And this is why if you have forgiven someone and you say it, but you're still plagued by it, you're still haunted by it, it still bothers you, it still nags at you, you haven't really forgiven them, you just lied. I'm not saying you didn't try, but you know when someone is actually forgiving someone because the charge in their body, you see it come out, and it goes away. This is probably, in my opinion, short of, being able to feed yourself or, other basic survival necessities, probably the most important skill you can possibly have as a human being. Because if you don't have this, or the ability to do this, and know how to do it, and actually understand how important it is, your life is not going to be your own. What do I mean by that? Your life is going to be beholden to the lessons you learned, which are usually incorrect, misinformation, something like that. Or just the pain is going to haunt you, and both the misinformation and the pain, deep down, as those are going to be your beliefs and stories, they are going to inform your thoughts, they're going to inform your actions, and they are going to drive you. And you're going to do things you don't even want to do. You're going to do things like self-sabotage yourself. You're going to do things for other people rather than for yourself, like, get a certain job or go a certain way in your life. You're going to be, even, let's say, in some cases it may be because it led you to doing something that you're trying to make someone else necessarily happy, let's say, because maybe maybe you had parents that were so hard on you and wanted you to go a certain direction, and so you went that direction because you couldn't just forgive them for being how they are and let go of that stuff and choose your own path. On the flip side, you might give them the finger and go, no, I'm not going to do that. But now you're just kind of doing the opposite, and you're still being driven by this stuff, right? And so that's why I think addressing trauma and grief and actually forgiving people and going through forgiveness and getting past that shit is important before you start to try to go accomplish anything. Now, you're never going to really be kind of fixed, or everything is just going to be kosher for the rest of your life. There's always going to be something where, like, oh shit, I remember that. That's something I could forgive, right? New awarenesses about this stuff come up every time. But if you tackle some of the biggest things in your life and actually work on forgiving, then you will be cleared up to where you can go, okay, now I'm thinking straight. Now I am not being plagued by fears and what ifs and bad beliefs, bad stories, negative thoughts, all that kind of stuff. And I can start living my life for myself. Not to mention the fact that you're no longer being dragged down by all that shit. So it's a good moment to clear something up right now. Forgiveness is not absolving someone else of their actions. It is not saying what they did was okay. We don't have excellent words in English to really define forgiveness well, because not only forgiveness can mean what it really means, which I'm about to get into, but it can also mean basically like accepting an apology and telling someone, no, it's okay, or like, no worries, I forgive you, right? Much in the same way that, like, was it the Greeks had like 4 different words for love? There's like relationship, passionate love with your partner, there's familial love, there's like love of your friends, and what was the last one? Love of life, or just, I forget what it exactly was. I'll have to look that up some other time. The point being, they understood that love encompasses so much that you could say I love you to someone, and I can say that to a friend and mean I just have love for you, like a friendship love. I care about you. You are someone who matters to me. I'm glad we're friends, all that kind of stuff. Or I could say I love you to someone, and I could be saying that to a partner, and it means something completely different. Like, no, this is, you are my person, right? So with forgiveness, we're not suggesting that what someone did was okay. We're not, letting them off the hook. It has nothing to do with that. What we are saying is, I'm not going to let this affect me anymore. That's it. The problem is, getting to that point is really, really, really difficult sometimes. Because things can be so horrific. It can be so painful that you can't imagine not being affected by it, identifying as a victim by it. It's and we have it in us to want to hold people accountable. And we feel that having that anger, that resentment, that pain, like if we let it go, it means that we're saying that what they did was okay or something like that. And we're really not saying that, right? So it's really important that that distinction is made, where you are recognizing that forgiveness is a key to let yourself out of a prison that you are in, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, not really physically. Hopefully not, at least. But it doesn't mean anything about passing judgment on the other person. It doesn't mean that you are saying what you did to me was okay or right or anything like that. And this is, I think this is a hurdle that a lot of people gotta get past and understand, because it makes moving forward so much easier, and there ought to be less resistance. I'm not saying there's not going to be struggle, and it's not a hard thing to still accomplish, because while the steps might be simple on paper, actually going through the process and letting go can be so hard, right? It can be so difficult. It can be such a struggle. So it seems like you can probably forgive people for smaller things. It's not so difficult when it's this dickhead cut me off. If you're the kind of person who gets really angry, hopefully you can start moving to forgiveness very quickly with them. But how does one forgive your child or grandchild being murdered in a church? Right? How that's born out of wisdom and experience. I can tell you that. But if you are struggling with something very large, or you have in the past, and you haven't gotten to the point where you have like really fully and truly forgiven, that first one is a gargantuan task, right? And you internally, because you don't realize often what's on the other side, that first one, it's like, but I like you, for some reason we want to hold on to it. Why we want to hold on to this pain, it's like it justifies your pain. It justifies your suffering to say they were wrong and, I didn't deserve this or whatever else. But again, the problem is, as long as that pain is there, as long as the incorrect lessons, the beliefs, the stories, etc. about it, because of how you're viewing it, remain, they will drive and fuck your life up. So we're going to have to then accept that and I've gotten in trouble for this once before by someone, and they just weren't really listening to what I was saying. But I've mentioned this in another stream before. While something may have happened to you that's not your fault, you have a responsibility to still address it now. And by that I mean, let's say you're driving a car and you stop at a red light and someone comes along and rear ends you. It wasn't your fault. You stopped at the red light. You did what you were supposed to do. However, it's now your responsibility to fix your car. Unfortunately, you have to take it to the shop. You have to get a loaner car for a while. Talk to your insurance company. It's a pain in the ass, right? But it is your responsibility to do. And we have to then accept, in a situation such as that you take at least 1% responsibility for the fact that your involvement was there. And while you might not be responsible for what happened to you, you have to take at least 1% responsibility for how you've reacted to it. Because you, willingly or not, are a participant in the event. Again, that's not, to reiterate, I'm not saying you take blame if, think of any trigger warning I could say right now. I'm not saying that you take blame for those things, right? What I am saying is that if you are going to take it into your power to move past this and to forgive the person, then you have to acknowledge that you have the power on how you choose to think about it, and therefore you take some responsibility just in having the power on how to think about it, because you're choosing how to think about it, right? If, let's say I'm screwing around with friends, right, and we're drinking or something, and one of my friends hits me by accident, right? In that moment, I have a few different ways I can choose to think about it. I can choose to go, we're all drunk, he screwed up and hit me by accident, no harm, no foul, let's laugh about it. Or I could say, you hit me, what the fuck, right? And one situation might be a better way to look at it than another, but you still have a choice on how to view it. Talked about this in other streams too, to take it to the most extreme end. I've talked about Dr. Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, and what he was talking about was choosing how to think when in a concentration camp about what was happening and how he was going to respond to it, how he was going to react to it, and not just outwardly respond and react, but how he was going to feel about it, what he was going to do about it internally, right? This is applicable to any major thing in your life. And it does not serve you to stay as a victim and to not forgive someone, as difficult as it is. In my opinion, it's the hardest thing I've probably ever done. And now seems like a decent time to get into that myself and the journey I had to take in understanding this and learning about it. Now and why this is so important to me too, I should say. I've talked about a bit about some things I've gone through, whether on my opening video on my site and past streams, and I've talked about my childhood and how I was a child of divorce when I was about 4 to 5 years old. Alcohol was involved. There were some scary nights there. That divorce led to me sharing a room with my mom in my grandparents' condo, and for 2 years, just kind of being there and suddenly in a new place, new school, separated from parents. We moved around a little bit, and being super introverted, I was very isolated. Didn't, not just didn't make friends easily, but didn't even want to, because you're moving around and it's like, well, next year I'm just going to lose them anyway, right? And it added up to a situation where it was like death by 1,000 cuts as far as trauma goes, where, I wouldn't say I was ever molested or anything like that, but just certainly as time went on, by the time I was a teenager, I was starting to definitely crack and going to therapy. By the time I was in, sophomore year of high school, I was, committed to a mental institution for a few weeks. Just no self-esteem, no self-worth, nothing like that. And, then I got into a relationship that was really, truly horrific and awful. That person and I had no business being together, and some people watching this might know who I'm talking about because her and I both played the same MMO together, so if you know me, then you'll know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to get into bad-mouthing her or anything like that. Just suffice to say that it was not good. Not good. Not good for 7 years. Really not good. For a while there, I probably stayed with her so much longer because I hated myself so much that I felt like I deserved to be with the worst person in the world. Because, if I'm the worst person in the world, then I deserve to be with the other worst person in the world. So this all led to a point where I finally I started working out of town for about 2 years, where I spent 5 days a week out of town away from her, and I started taking steps to... This is really when I started to dive into the first steps of how I arrived here, right? I'm looking into, what is wrong? I need to get a hold of my life, because, this is not working out. And so I'm finding, life hacks, and I'm focused on, diet and weight, because I was, gigantic at the time. 285 pounds. Gigantic. Just... It was... It was the first few years where I began to go down this road, but I didn't really understand about forgiveness or anything like that. I just realized at a certain point that things, I needed to get away from this person. But I didn't still have any self-worth in myself or anything like that. And so all the lessons I had learned over the years of being isolated, rejected, being with people who were toxic, all these other things, just... It was tough even in those few years to rewire my belief system without doing any forgiveness, to just recognize, yes, I can get out of this situation, and I need to if I'm ever going to have a life, right? But the problem is, because I didn't actually heal those things yet, I then very quickly found someone who I consider to be my soulmate. I found this person. We were both the same MBTI type, which is INFP. If you know anything about MBTI, you know that we're the romantic, lover, idealists. We're often the ones who are therapists and all that kind of life coaches. We're very interested in people, shoegaze music type people, just very secluded. And it's a weird kind of life because you're super interested in people, but you're also introverted. Anyway, this person it was love at first sight. And within a few weeks of talking, where it was just absolute, firing on all cylinders, I was convinced this person's my soulmate. Right? The thing to know about soulmates is, if you think that's the case and you know you have trauma and that it's unresolved, you really are likely dealing with the case where the other person is codependent in some way, or you two are fitting into one another's like unhealthy needs. It should be a warning sign. Now, if you've gone through, if you're like super healthy and well adjusted and all that kind of stuff, and you've dealt with trauma or never had it in the first place or whatever, this isn't necessarily applicable. But if you have, it's something to keep in mind. And I learned that later on. And in our case, it was actually true. Where I was super codependent on her for my entire self-image, and she was codependent on me because she had a bit of a traumatic upbringing and just kind of was super timid and not really experienced in life, and kind of needed someone to be a bit of a white knight, if I'm being honest. The first few years of that were more than I could have ever asked. And I mean, we never fought. Now, by the way, side note, that's also a bad thing. You really want something like, for every 4 positive interactions, 1 negative interaction. Why would you want to fight with your spouse, or just disagree with them for that matter? Well, if you're not, then you guys are lying to one another. And in her case, she was just bottling up everything inside, not rock the boat, because of her upbringing, where her parents were kind of strict and, not really allowed to have an opinion. So I'm not aware enough at that point to go, oh, this is a bad sign. In fact, just the opposite. I'm thinking, wow, look at how amazing we are. We never fight, right? So for a few years, it was actually truly incredible. The amount of love between us was off the charts. I mean, the first few years, I'm not saying that there weren't some, interesting times here or there. There was one time briefly where I was working in the oil industry, and my team stopped, and for like 2 months I didn't have work, but then I got onto another team, but it was a little tight in there, stuff like that. But it was during this time, luckily, that I was beginning to have some struggles with my dad and the past, and really kind of, as I was still trying to get better and be better and fix myself, and why do I suck? Why am I, like, I know I have things going decently in that I had a job in the oil industry, which doesn't pay that bad, to be honest. We were able to take vacations, do fun things, go on dates and stuff like that. Like, I knew I was still not happy inside. I knew I could be better, I could do better, and all this other kind of stuff. And I was constantly fighting these negative thoughts and, just all that shit. And I, luckily, have had two people in my life who, because at that point I had, as I was kind of transitioning out of the oil industry because it was dying, at least here in America, like, people weren't really drilling or looking for new land to lease or anything like that in like the 2014-2015 area. I had moved to designing websites, and that's what I thought I wanted to do really anyway, and I have done that for most of the last decade. And it just so happened that I hired a life coach, and we worked together a little bit, and he asked me to design his website, and he's a pretty popular life coach. And then I met a bunch of other life coaches because they saw his website and asked who did it, and I got in touch with them. As things were coming to a head, these two people both had a real impact because they could see how much my experiences from my childhood were holding me back, and it was a point where, like, every phone call would devolve into a fight. And what would happen was I was so fearful and scared of the judgment from growing up and being guilt-tripped and all these kinds of things. And to be fair, I'm not blaming anyone here. And I'll get to that in a moment. It just became a pattern where I had all these beliefs and fears and everything that were driving me in every interaction. Now, one of the people that I worked with, I'm actually going to switch over and pull up their website right now. Mind you, I made this website, which is pretty neat. This is zensmarts.com. This woman's name is Meredith Hook, and she's honestly incredible. She was in like the hedge fund world for a while, and was just so stressed out and really having a problem with life. Began to meditate and has just completely run with it for a while. She nearly she actually did go over to, I think it was India, was going to join a monastery as a Buddhist monk and all this kind of stuff. Wound up not doing it, but now teaches people about meditation, mindfulness, and also uses it as a way to get to forgiveness. In fact, she wrote a book, Let Forgiveness Set You Free. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in a moment, but just as a side note, if you are wanting to learn more about meditation, if you want a free 6-minute meditation for busy people to immediately relieve stress and move on with their day, you can just click on this. You can put your name and email address in. Not only will you get this video, which is actually super useful, you will also get these cool little reminders every Monday that she calls Remindful Mondays, where it's just a bit of wisdom, and it's actually a really nice thing, to be honest. But I was working with Meredith, and we were going through, and this topic of things being a struggle with my dad came up, and somehow we came to a point where she said the line, no one wakes up in the morning and is like, how can I be the biggest asshole today? Right? And I don't know if it was because I had a realization and she responded to it or whatever else, but it just stuck with me. And really what I came to recognize was, for everything that this person had done to me, whether it was the guilt trips or rough experiences in my childhood, things I witnessed, I thought to myself, okay, if I've gone through all this trauma and grief and it's led me here, and this is who I am now, and this is what I'm struggling with, and these are the like bad things that come out of me because of this. What did he have to go through to get to where he is now? When I had this realization, all my anger disappeared, and all I felt was pity. Because it's like, how much pain would you have to be in to drink so much that you, I mean, honestly, got to a point that he needed a liver transplant a few years ago. It's a lot of drinking. And so one piece of the puzzle, if something big has happened to you and you need to come across, you're trying to get to the point where you can forgive them, is really try to recognize how unfortunately human we all are in these situations. If someone has wronged you terribly, it's not likely the case that they woke up that morning and were otherwise a good person or a normal person or anything like that and just decided, I'm gonna go hurt someone badly today. I'm gonna be a giant asshole today. Typically, it's that their own awful traumas are just causing them to repeat and continue a cycle, and it has now arrived at you. And ideally, if you're watching this, if you're, trying to figure out something and trying to grasp for forgiveness, the more that you can break those cycles and forgive and move on without continuing them, not only does that help your life, it helps the rest of the world, because now you're not going to continue it on other people, whether you intend to or not. And chances are you don't really intend to, but as I said before, you're being driven by these things usually, until you finally decide to let it go and move on. So that's the first thing that I think is truly important to understand here, is you really want to recognize that we're all incredibly flawed humans. And if you can see how something that has happened to you that was really negative and fucked up affects you, hopefully you can, as horrific as this is, empathize in the sense of not like, oh, I feel bad for them. More just look at it like, okay, but what would have to happen for me to get to a place where I do what they do? Now, it may not be exactly the same. I'm not saying that if you went through the exact same things, you choose to make the exact same decisions, but it would probably be somewhere in the ballpark, or at least you'd feel that way, whether you acted on it or not, right? So, that's the first piece of information. The second piece was from the person who would eventually become my mentor, and still is my mentor. And that was going through an actual process to fully forgive someone. And it's a little, although the woman in the church shooting, having the sense and wisdom to go that direction as she was pouring her heart out and forgiving in the moment, probably did a damn fine job, and I don't think she really needed a system. Most of us usually do, because you really want to look at a picture completely. And often when you look at an event or a relationship to someone who has done something where you need to forgive them, if you really lay everything out, you typically see that, and this is not all cases. For example, trigger warning, if you were walking alone one night and robbed at gunpoint. You probably didn't know that person, and there's probably not a whole lot of history or anything like that where you need to lay it out on paper and be like, oh, remember these good times we had. But if you were betrayed or hurt by someone who was family or friend, it's likely not so black and white. And so by laying all this out, not only did we just talk about kind of humanizing someone in the sense that no one wakes up and tries to be an asshole, we also look and recognize that these people usually aren't all bad. And when we can get to that point, it becomes a lot easier to get to the next steps of actually forgiving someone. Because now you can look at them not as the big, scary, evil monster that victimized you. You can just look at them as a flawed human being. And this then allows you to start looking a little bit more objectively and begin to change how you view the situation, the stories you tell yourself about the situation, again going back to having 1% responsibility and that you can choose how you're going to look at this, and get to a point where you say, I'm gonna let this go. I'm gonna forgive you. I'm done with this. I'm not going to let this hold me back anymore. I'm going to choose to view it this way. I'm going to choose to look at it and go, okay, I see the full, complete picture in front of me. I'm not going to say that what you did was necessarily right, or that I wasn't wronged, or anything else. Simply put, I am choosing to move on from this now. Because you holding it against them is only keeping you locked in the prison. Now, you can keep making their life hell and I'll get into that. But at the end of the day, whether you're making their life hell or not, you're still in hell. So it's like, yeah, you can take your revenge if you really want. But you're still miserable. So it's not really the best solution. Going back to my story. Luckily, I had these early experiences forgiving not just my father, but a few other people and a few other major events, and I saw that in doing so, it allowed me, as you go through and you do this and you forgive someone, if you do it well and you truly mean it and get it out, and by get it out, I mean the fact is trauma is it is also stored in the body, right? So someone's really tense. There's techniques out there, things like somatic experiencing, where basically you are trying to wear out your muscles, and that can help in dealing with and letting go of trauma, or even just be something that helps you kind of get through for a while. But I don't want to delve into that. But what I'm saying here is that as I went through this and looked at these situations, it's necessary, if you're going to forgive someone truly, to kind of rewrite the story that you've been telling yourself and how you've been thinking about it, and taking that 1% responsibility and going, I'm going to start looking at this a different way, right? In doing so, and I've talked about this from the very first stream, if you change your beliefs and you change your stories, and I'm going to use those two kind of interchangeably, but those are really at the root of a tree. If they're rotten because you have misinformation, the wrong lessons learned, not your fault either. Like, often as children, we just don't have the brain development to really understand everything about a situation, right? And even if we did, we don't necessarily have the tools or techniques or wisdom or maturity or anything else to actually think it through. As we, me now in my late 30s, I understand a situation and I can deal with it exponentially more than I could when I was 7, right? So we're not blaming ourselves as children for getting the wrong messages, but now as adults, luckily we can look back and go, oh my god, as a kid, here's what went on, here's what I went through. I'm going to change, I'm going to look at this narrative more fully. I'm going to focus on different parts. I'm going to recognize that maybe this person wasn't just out to cause me the maximum amount of misery, although they might have been. But even if they were, it was likely driven by their own pain and trauma. Right? And if we could go back to humanizing someone and recognizing that it's a cycle that is being repeated and now has gotten to you, we can hopefully go, even if they were doing that, at least I have some understanding why, and it wasn't just malevolence for the sake of making me fucking miserable, right? And beating me down and making me a victim in some way. So, as I worked on this, certain aspects of me began to change. And it began to free me up, and I was taking back a bit more control of my life. But unfortunately, first off, like I said, fortunately, I had some experience with this in like the 2014 to 2015 era. Unfortunately, as I was making this transition out of the oil industry, we were living in Houston at the time. Neither of us were from Houston, and things were getting to be a struggle for my ex. We were entangled with another couple who were friends of ours, but was also my boss and then also my ex's boss, as they paid her to come let their dogs out every day during the week, during lunch, and also to just kind of like clean up their house a bit and other stuff. And the situation between the wife of that couple and my ex was just deteriorating rapidly. And, my ex was just getting depressed very quickly. She was just really struggling with basic day-to-day things, to the point that I was kind of looking at her like, what the fuck is so hard about this? Like, dude, you gotta go let dogs out for lunch every day. Like, come on, like, what the fuck? And I'm not hating right now, but in the moment I was like, I'm working like crazy trying to like take care of us. You can't go let dogs out. But it got to a point, both of us didn't want to be in Texas, and I knew the longer we stayed there, the more that this was going to deteriorate, because we couldn't just tell these people to fuck off. Like, we had to get out of Texas. And there were a few other things that were driving us to get out of there. And as time went on, we were just struggling finding a place to move to. We wanted to move to the Northeast. I'm from New Jersey. I love that area, and I wanted to get back home, and she was down. And but being in Texas, we were having a hard time finding a place. We were trying to buy a house, which luckily didn't happen. But it eventually got to the point that the plan was, I found a very cheap Airbnb on a farm in New York, like just a little over the Pennsylvania border, and still pretty close to the New Jersey border, where it was like a one-bedroom apartment. It was a building with 2 one-bedroom apartments attached to it, and it was like super cheap to stay there. We rented it for a few months to get out of Texas, get away from these kind of toxic situations, and hopefully find a permanent place, over those 3 months. Money was getting tighter. I was kind of juggling, trying to keep her from breaking down. Like, things just kept getting worse and worse. I'm trying to orchestrate this move. We're trying to separate and kind of detach from Houston and all that kind of stuff. But unfortunately, she really couldn't take the pressure and started an affair with someone that she met who worked at a grocery store that she frequented a lot. And this was emotional, sending pictures, and I guess meeting up once but not actually doing anything, but not that it really matters. It's obviously still a betrayal. And she tells me this on her birthday, which is at the end of December, which is about 2 weeks out from when we're going to make this cross-country move. And I am I'm still so codependent on her for my worth and validation and being, because even though I had done a bit of forgiving and fixing of trauma, this was still my soulmate, and like, I was okay because I was dating this person, right? It's like she justified me, right? I hadn't really done a lot of hard work on myself, even outside of forgiveness, and including forgiving myself, but also changing myself and becoming aware of some of the things that I was doing as a result of, you know, even though some things cleared up, I still had to take a hard look at myself at a certain point and recognize all the things, all the bad choices I was making, all the things I was doing wrong. Anyway, we're 2 weeks away from moving. I'm like, let's just get out of here and it'll all be fixed, because we'll be away from this guy, we'll be away from all these other people, you'll get better because we'll be out of this situation. The move was one of the hardest I've ever had to make cross country. It was utterly... we got out a day or two late from Houston, and so we were racing to get to the places we needed to be on time and just driving insane amounts. That also caused her a ton of pressure, and she kept talking to the guy because of that, even though she was supposed to have cut off contact with him. So after we get there, she, within, like, I'd say, I don't know, 2 to 3 weeks, admits that she was talking to the guy again. And at this point, now, instead of it just being like, oh, you were under a lot of stress and you made some mistakes, now it's, you promised me you weren't going to do this and you betrayed me. And now that we're there and I'm not so, oh my god, we just need to get the fuck out here, we just need to get up there and everything's going to be okay. Now that I'm there and it, like, hits me, I completely just, when someone who you build your entire self-worth and self-confidence and self-esteem on betrays you, not only did they betray you and the relationship, it shatters your entire reality because of the fact that you thought for the past few years, like, it was something, and it wasn't. So you were being lied to the whole time, right? So now you have to question, what else do I not know about reality, right? Because I was clearly wrong. And if those two things aren't bad enough, you and your entire self shatters. Because if you built yourself on this person and they betray you, then what are you? Needless to say, that's quite traumatic, to the point that I was basically catatonic for at least a few weeks before I started coming out of it. And by that I mean I would get up and I'd sit down to work and I would just stare at my computer monitor for like hours and I couldn't even do anything. As I said before, money was getting worse and I couldn't, I was struggling to get work and all that kind of stuff. So now I'm not working, it's only getting worse, and we're in a temporary situation, no friends, no family around, no support on this farm, and now I'm stuck in this tiny little one-bedroom temporary apartment while we're trying to figure out a permanent solution. And because I was still built so much of myself on her, and I was still looking at the previous 4 years or so we were together and how it was so great. We're still trying to work on it and figure it out. And what we probably should have done was said, you know what, you go get the fuck out of here, and I will just find like a small 1-bedroom place, and like we're separating, but that's not what happened. It took us a few months to find a place that would take our dogs and us in the area that we wanted, which was the Poconos of Pennsylvania, which is beautiful. It's still probably my favorite place to live despite everything that happened. But, and we moved there in about mid-April. But in the process, unfortunately, she started talking to the neighbor who lived in the 1-bedroom apartment next to ours. And now it's a situation where she is like regularly betraying my trust, and going behind my back and all these things. And kind of back and forth between if we were going to stay together or not or whatever, and I'm still trying to hold on because now we just locked into a 1-year rental agreement on this house, and I didn't find out about this second affair until after we did that. I didn't know that this was going on with this guy, and I found out because I saw a text message from the farmer's wife, who knew and apparently was encouraging of this. Thanks, farmer and farmer's wife. I mean, we were Airbnb tenants. Maybe you could, I don't know, not fuck my marriage up. I regret giving you a good review. Fucking assholes. Anyway, I didn't know until we left. And so now we're locked in, and now, again, we're still running out of more money. I need her help to just kind of get through each day, because we now have this big-ass 3-bedroom house, 2 dogs. I'm trying to work my ass off to be able to afford to pay bills. We are putting stuff on credit cards left and right, getting in massive debt. And it was fucked up because we're going back and forth and we're living together, so sometimes it's good and she's like, yes, I was wrong or whatever. Other times it's no, I want to be with this guy, and some real betrayal shit going on too, where she was going behind my back, kind of plotting against me in some ways, which is just like a dagger over and over and over. And I felt trapped. I felt trapped in this relationship. I felt trapped in our new rental agreement, all those kinds of things. And it got to a point where I thought we were gonna be okay, and we, had like a week or so. Now we're in kind of like end of May, beginning of June, where things were kind of rekindled and we're doing better. But we have no money, and the farm is going to be hosting an event, and they needed help and workers, and it was like, well, if you go there, I kind of did the math, it was going to be something like $1,000, or it should have been. They wound up only paying like $400 for her working basically nonstop for 2.5 days straight and getting no sleep, which is fucking another thing. This person laid with me in bed and looked me in the eyes and told me nothing was going to happen when she went there to go work this job, knowing that the dude was going to be there. And 36 hours later, something did happen. This is really the culmination of 6 months of lies and betrayal, and someone who I built my entire existence on, my self-worth, everything on, just repeatedly betraying me over and over and over and over. And while she came back, I didn't find out immediately what happened. She just made up some bullshit that, oh, I still have feelings for him. And that's why, maybe it's best that we're just not together. For her, it was later on, about a month later, when she finally came out with the truth over the course of 3 days. she said she went to tell him that they were done and everything, even though I asked her not to talk to him at all. And I guess he kind of got her into his apartment, closed the door behind her, and she just shut down as he started to do things. And then because she figured it would be over with me, she went back the next night, figuring, oh, well, now I gotta be with this guy, because she also didn't have... She was also codependent on someone else taking care of her, let's say. When that came out, a month later, it's then a situation where things were so bad, money-wise and everything else, and also now that everything's out, you know, she's saying, I want to try to fix things and all that kind of stuff, that it led to us kind of being trapped for 3 years, barely surviving, barely holding on, a hell in which I'm trying my best to forgive her, but it's not fully working, because I mean, the massive betrayal and just complete shattering of who I was. I was barely hanging in there. She was barely hanging in there mentally because of the weight of what she did. Both suicidal. No money at all to get out of the situation we were in. Working our asses off just to get any money we could. And this went on for 3 years because we literally couldn't even afford to move out of that place. Like, we just couldn't scrounge up enough money to make a move happen to somewhere else, wherever that would have even been. And, you know, honestly, it was like, where would we even go? This was the magnitude of the trauma and loss. There's not even words to accurately describe just how catastrophic this was. And the worst part is, anyone who knew us would have never possibly known. And not only that, I didn't even want to tell anyone, because then I didn't want people to, like, if we're going to try to stay together, I don't want them looking at her in a bad way. So now we're dealing with it just kind of by ourselves, and maybe a few other people who are close knew. And it was just hell. It was it was absolute rock bottom. Finances went to complete hell. My work went to complete hell. The relationship went to complete hell. My health went to complete hell. Everything went to hell. I mean, thank God, knock on wood, this guy, nothing happened to him or our other dog during this time, because like that would have probably completed it, to be honest. Like, everything else was going bad. Luckily, nothing bad happened to the dogs who were in our care. I don't know what we would have done if that was thrown on top too, because dogs mean a lot. The reason I've shared this story and talked about this is because chances are, if you're watching this or you're dealing with needing to forgive someone, it's like, how can I do this? And I can say at this point, I'm sitting here and able to talk about this to the fucking internet because it's okay. Because I've forgiven her. And I actually wish her the best in the world. And I mean that too. Like, I hope she has an amazing life. And I'm actually just kind of sorry that she might have to live with what she did going forward. And I've tried to say, please don't. Please don't take this with you and feel you're not worthy of having a decent life because you want to, like, punish yourself over this any longer. But what it took to get there And the reason I bring it up is to show that the stuff I was talking about before is exactly the stuff I used to get to the place where I am now with her and move on and forgive and now also be the person I am. It's recognizing that she was human. It's recognizing that her having a mental breakdown, all the ways she acted out, were her trauma coming out. Right? Even though it was a betrayal of us and me, at the same time, it wasn't about me. Right? And it's about saying, this completely broke me. It completely shattered who I was, everything about me, anything I thought I knew. I was devastated. I've mentioned this before. You know, people sometimes point out that in Dante's Inferno, the betrayers are at the lowest level of hell, right next to Satan himself. Because the worst thing you can do to someone is, if they trust you, stab them in the back. Like, even the murderers on, like, level 5. Right? But the betrayers, they are the ones, literally, that is, the worst thing you can do is betray someone's trust. And this is because everything is founded on it. Right? All interactions that we have are based on the ability to trust on some level. Like, I have to be able to trust that if I meet you in a grocery store, you're not just going to attack me and rob me or something like that. So luckily, in societies like ours, we don't really have to worry about those things too much. We can generally feel safe and trust other people. And the reason that we trust them is because we have shared values and shared culture and all these other things, right? And I don't want to go too deep down that road, but trust is everything. And I wanted to share that to show that, for me, if I was really going to design the worst possible trauma for me personally, it would probably be that I'd be isolated and a loner most of my life. I would be super introverted, move around to the point where I couldn't even really make friends, have a alcoholic father who was, you know, kind of, let's say, emotionally, I don't want to say abusive, but certainly not awesome, to the point that then as a teenager, I'm escaping to games. I'm hiding behind a screen. I'm creating a totally different life on an MMO. One where I can escape how awful my real life is. I have no self-esteem, no self-worth, no nothing. But there, I can be something else. Right? Unfortunately, there I also meet someone who's absolutely repulsive. But hey, I feel like I'm the worst person in the world, so I'm going to get with the other worst person in the world. And we're going to make a worst person in the world team. Right? And hey, it just so happens we both play the same video game. How great is that? How well does that line up? And eventually I'd get away from them and I'd find the one person that I ever thought really knew me, really loved me, that recharged me as an introvert, that I could talk to for hours. That was not someone who drained me, that I just wanted to get away from. That was my soulmate. And have 3 to 4 of the best years of my life. And then of all people, to have that person be the one to turn around and for 6 months straight repeatedly stab me in the back over and over and over, and in the process my entire life would fall apart. My finances, my health, everything, it got biblically bad. I feel like if I could forgive that, if the Charleston church shooter grandma could forgive him, if in this book, the Book of Joy, it starts off with Desmond Tutu talking about how they don't start on joy. They start by talking about forgiveness in South Africa at the end of apartheid, and how important it was to do that. There was a whole tribunal set up of forgiving people so that they could move forward as a society, despite all of the horrific shit that they did. Right? I love that book too. Then maybe it's possible that if you recognize that forgiveness is not accepting what someone else did or saying it was okay or correct or right or anything like that, just that it's, I am going to change my thoughts about this and I am going to choose to let it no longer affect me. And if you can recognize that they're human, and the vast majority of humans are not psychopaths who have no capacity for, human emotion and things like that. The vast majority are human who are flawed and make not just terrible mistakes, but their negative experiences drive them as well. And if you could maybe see how you were driven sometimes by your negative experiences and how that comes out, and be able to empathize. And if you are able to sit and step out of being a victim just for a moment and look at a situation objectively with those things in mind and go, I am going to choose how I view this so that it frees me and possibly even empowers me. Again, I think if South Africa can do it, if the church shooter woman can do it, if I can do it, and I know so many other stories. I'll give you a horrific one. My mentor worked with someone who, as a child, maybe I think it was as a child, but not like super young, not like 3 or 4, but a little bit later, watched her dad shoot and kill her mother for the insurance money. And my mentor had to work with them through a process to get them to forgive that so that she could move on, the client. In all these cases, Nazi Germany and Dr. Viktor Frankl, in all these cases, forgiveness is possible. You also hear there's the stories of like the child called It. I believe there's a book about it where it was like a kid who his mother just basically tortured him for years upon years, and he was able to forgive his mother. Like all he knew was pain and suffering. She'd like rip his fingernails off and shit, like, and just starve him and lock him in cages and like horrific shit. And I'm not saying it doesn't have an effect. I'm just saying that forgiveness is possible. It's possible for you, and you, if you are struggling with something, should really do it, because on the other side of that is letting go of that pain, no longer letting it affect you. In the process, you would have had to look and rewire your brain a little bit about your beliefs and your stories, so when those beliefs and stories change and that misinformation's gone, it's no longer throwing up negative thoughts, negative, ideas and stuff that you have to fight constantly all the time. Those evaporate because now you have a different belief, a different story, which is sending up whole different ideas. And as part of forgiving and working through everything I did, I had to rebuild who I was and install new beliefs that served me. And that also required forgiving myself for all the ways I fucked up in the past and all the ways I thought I knew about life that I clearly didn't, because I found myself at rock bottom. So I took responsibility as part of finding myself where I found myself in the Poconos with a completely decimated relationship. No money, no everything. Right? And because of that, because of forgiving her, the other people in my life, and myself, and rewiring and building these new stories and everything else, now I am able to sit here and say all this shit to the internet without freaking the fuck out and wanting to hide and being, because I couldn't own my story, or I'd be afraid, or whatever else. And I can stand here and go, no, this is what I went through, and I'm using this to show these are the things that you can do to get to a better place too. Not that I'm some guru, not that I'm not Tony Robbins, but I have an inner peace and a purpose and a mission that I know it, because the traumas and the negative beliefs and all that other shit aren't getting in the way and making the thinking fuzzy and not being able to figure it out and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that there's never any problems or things to stress out about, but because of that meaning, and because of not being weighed down by these past traumas, and because I have different beliefs and everything else, even though there are problems, I'm not held back like so many people are. So many people that I talk to, the impetus for doing this in the first place is that I was going on MMOs and talking to friends and saying, this is what happened to me, and talking about trauma and all this, and so many people are struggling with this, and they're not, I guess, aware of the things that I'm trying to talk about now, and I'm hoping to make them aware of it so that everyone can start fucking healing and breaking these negative cycles and making the world a better place, and making their world and themselves better as well. First and foremost them, maybe, but it also helps the rest of the world. That's what we're trying to do here, right? If you want a good place to start with forgiveness, this Let Forgiveness Set You Free book, you can find this on Amazon. Step-by-step workbook, letting go of the pain and finding peace. And it legitimately is a workbook. I can turn to any page and you can see there's, stuff to fill out, like the whole way through. Right, there we go. And this is... Wow. Well, aside from the about the author, like the very last page even still has some stuff going on. 175 pages of forgiveness and prompts, finding reasons to forgive, learning to slow down. And the cool thing about Meredith is she is super, super smart about not just the Eastern traditions, but she works with people at universities and into brain studies and things like that to understand the science behind it. In fact, her website Zen Smarts is about kind of not just finding the middle ground, but explaining why so many of these things like meditation and mindfulness, forgiveness and all that actually matter and work scientifically, right? And she does a really good job of explaining that connection and also understanding that connection so that the suggestions she's making are backed by science, even though they might be ancient wisdom. And through here I already see some of the stuff that I know I've learned from her and that she's shared through blog posts or videos, or she also has a course on her website. What is it called? I'm gonna find this out real fast. it is Peaceful Minds for Busy Lives is the name of the course. It's not super expensive, but the idea is it's really made for kind of the modern person who has a job, especially like an office job. You're a typical American. We can't all run off to India and just meditate for the rest of our lives. So it's really about bringing in a lot of these practices, but making them really implementable in your day-to-day life. Now, that not all of that stuff is forgiveness based, but if you are finding yourself stressed or anything else outside of needing to forgive people, or you just want some tips and tactics, you want to get into meditation, you want to learn different kinds of meditations, these are guided, and you also want to understand why doing certain meditations, how that can help you with certain and specific situations that arise in your life. So let's say something happens, well, then maybe you should do this meditation. It's going to help you kind of tackle that problem. I highly recommend going to zensmarts.com. In fact, I'm going to type it in the chat so that it comes up here. Boom. Wonderful person. I'm really grateful to know her. I'm grateful for all her help and that she helped me with some of the beginning steps of this when we were working together. But while I do other work with clients as far as the systems that I'm taking them through and everything else, in that it's useful because it's a coach to client relationship that I can work with them through. This still, if you just need a place to start, go find this on Amazon. Maybe I will try. I don't get any commission from this, by the way. It's just that I know Meredith. I know she's awesome, and I actually, think that's a good book. And I know the work she does, and I know I've been through it actually working with her, and I know that this stuff matters, and she knows what she's talking about. And as opposed to maybe some let's say like a deep dive into it, it's really the case where you're just getting kind of shorter, smaller prompts but more repetitively, so it might ease you into it a little bit more if you have not done this kind of thing yet, if this is kind of a new topic for you, if you're just now recognizing that this is actually a really, really big deal, and like I said, probably the most important skill you can have outside of being able to feed and clothe yourself. Really, we almost all of us have something that happened that is kind of fucking with us in some way, right? It may not be that you were like, again, any trigger warning you want to choose. Pick any trigger warning you want to choose. Maybe you don't have a trigger warning, right? Maybe you don't have that negative of an experience, but there may still be little smaller things, and it's just, even if they're smaller things, it's a useful tool to go through life. I've described some really, really big situations with forgiveness, but I apply this down to people all the time, like that are just not really super important, but I have to deal with them for some reason. There's definitely people in Nexus, the MMO, that so many of my viewers and myself play, that are not the most awesome people, right? But I can just look at them and go, doesn't mean I don't hold them accountable for their actions, or I'm going to let them get away with being shitty people. I will call people out if necessary. I will try to hold people accountable if, they're hurting other people. There's been instances on this game of bullying and just some really toxic shit. And again, forgiveness doesn't mean we're gonna let that shit go. We're gonna still hold people accountable. But one of the beautiful things about forgiveness is it's how it affects how you approach something. And while I can't say that I've always forgiven someone before I've approached a subject or a topic or a situation with someone, what does happen is And this is something that in society I think we could really learn right now. Let's say someone should be held accountable for something, right? But if you're charged and coming from a place of anger, you are just continuing a vicious cycle of anger and misery, and that's what you're putting out into the world. Even if you're justified in holding them accountable and they should be punished or something like that. This is the problem with cancel culture, is they're coming at this shit from this anger and resentment, and I want them punished and hurt and all that kind of stuff. You are just putting out negativity and hate and all this crap into the world, right? On the flip side, you could forgive people and come instead from a place of, this person needs to be held accountable, but we need to work for the best overall situation for everyone involved, even them. Even if we have to hold them accountable, even if we have to, it's a person who needs to be sent to jail or something. But you're coming from a place of actual compassion and love, and it's a tough thing, and it's a nuanced thing, right? Because love is not just letting people off the hook. I talked about this in another stream. It's not the parent who just says, "Oh, you can get away with anything, little Jimmy," or "Oh, you did something wrong. No, it's okay. I forgive you. Go on, because I love you." No, you still have to correct your children. You have to hold them accountable. You have to punish sometimes to teach a lesson that something is not the right thing to do, or to just you can't get away with that, right? And that's unfortunately how reality in the universe works. But we don't. Ideally, a parent shouldn't be angry at their kid and I am going to hurt you so bad because you pissed me off with whatever you did, right? That's not how we want to come at dealing with a child. You need to put that shit aside and forgive your child, and then go, okay, all right, I'm calmed down. I've forgiven you. You fucked up. I still got to hold you accountable, but I need to come at this with love so that you learn the proper lesson, so that you're not just angry back at me because I was resentful and vengeful at you and just wanted to cause you pain, right? Extrapolate that out to society. That's what we should be doing. That's why cancel culture is fucking stupid. I'm not saying don't hold people accountable for being wrong. I'm not saying that there's not problems in the world, but in whoever you deal with, whether it's your dog, your kid, your spouse, your people on an MMO, that in games you play and stuff, people on Twitter, the person at the store, whatever else, this skill is so useful because you're going to live a better life by quickly processing and getting that anger and resentment and shit out, because you're just robbing yourself if you don't. And you're going to be making the world a better place because you're coming from a place of a compassion and going, even if I need to hold this person accountable, how can I make it all better? How can I make this situation a win-win if possible for everyone? And there's been times as a leader I've had to come down on people and punish, but because I went through this forgiveness process, because I went and I thought and said, how is it that everyone here can win if possible? What's the best possible outcome? That even when I punish people, they would come back to me and say thank you. I learned something here. I could have been a massive dick. It's in my power, in my position, in the game I play, that I can fuck any of you over. I mean, let's call it like it is. I really could. But that would be fucking awful. And that's not why I'm here. Why I'm here is to make this a better world, a better game, a better place. And we should really take forgiveness a lot more seriously. We barely pay it any lip service in our current culture, and it's fucking stupid. And we don't value it any longer. It's now, oh no, these people in the past did this, so we need to hold people in the present accountable, or even people in the present did this and we need to hold them. It's just, all we're focused on is punishment and pain, and people, and encouraging people to be victims, and then trying to get revenge for those victims. We are creating a toxic society. And we gotta stop. So, I would recommend learning about forgiveness, taking it seriously, trying to implement this in your life, both for your big past traumas and pains, so that you can move on without being weighed down by them, without being held back by them, without being haunted by them. And so that as you move forward in the world, you can catch yourself more quickly, stop robbing yourself, getting so upset by what the news says or what Twitter says or this or that or all the shit going on in the world, and be the change you want to see in the world. Because if you're able to forgive and come with more compassion, maybe, just maybe, if enough of us do this and start getting our shit together and taking responsibility for ourselves and who we are and forgiving and healing ourselves so that we're better people, then maybe we can pull society back from the absolutely stupid fucking direction we're going, and hopefully start to turn it around and maybe come back to a place where higher values like truth and love and honesty and compassion win, as opposed to hate and anger and vengeance. This is completely applicable to you and your life. Dealing with shit, dealing with your past, dealing with traumas and griefs and losses that have happened to you. And it's also applicable to you as a member of society at large, and society at large for that matter. That is why forgiveness is so important. That is why it is the number one skill that everyone should have. So, I feel that wasn't a really bad hour and 40 minutes. You guys can tell me how that went. Shit's delicious. Cherry limeade, sparkling ice. The black cherry is also very good. Once again, if you need it, I'll hold it up a little bit closer. Let Forgiveness Set You Free by Meredith Hooke. Hooke. You can find this on Amazon. It's not that super expensive. What is this? It says $16.99 US, but I think it was like $10. I don't know. What is you do all this work and forgive someone and then they hurt you again? Yeah. Well, that kind of goes into still holding someone accountable. I got you. What if you do all this work and forgive someone and then they hurt you again? So again, just because we forgave someone doesn't mean that we don't hold them accountable, and it also doesn't mean that we don't take proper lessons from that, right? It's not about saying, no, it's cool, you're forgiven, like everything's okay. You can still move forward in, for example, I forgave my ex, but I'm not getting back with her, right? I learned that lesson. So if, and with, for example, my dad, right? Once I forgave him, the way that I was acting on the calls with him changed. So what would happen is I was kind of like fearful of him and his opinions, and that he always just had something like negative to say and kind of like beat me down and all this kind of shit. And so I would kind of just not go into details, not really talk about this. And so he knew I was lying or hiding something, so naturally he's like, let me just like zero in on that. And I mean, he's a smart dude, I'm a smart dude, like we're both really good at kind of asking the right questions to figure something out. So he would figure out whatever it was, and then he'd be like, I caught you, you were lying to me. And it just was a cycle that happened so often from childhood. when I forgave him, I stopped acting that way, and I started just saying, this is what it is, and your opinion isn't going to affect me, right? And I remember the first time he tried, because something came up, and instead of me trying to hide it, I just said it. And he started laying in, and because I had forgiven him and I had released that charge, right? It was no longer in me, all this. It was just like, he tried, and I just didn't care. I just didn't give a shit. And I just then said, like, look, I appreciate what you're saying, but that's just not what it is for me. Or, whatever I said, something like that. And we still have those conversations sometimes too, where I just step up and honestly say, like, this is what it is, and he'll and actually, most recently, I was saying something I want to do, and he was kind of, the root of it was that he was concerned for me, which is actually pretty sweet. But he started kind of going, and I was like, hold on. No offense, but like, this is what I want to do. I know you're concerned for me, and I appreciate that, but I just don't see a better option. And like, when would be a good time for me to do this? Should I just never do something I actually want to do? And then he came around and was like, yeah, well, and then he just, the real stuff was coming out where it was just his concern, right? And then I could appreciate that, and I could address his concerns, and we could have that talk. So there's kind of two things here. Number one, if it's someone who they're hurting you because they're trying to do the same old shit, through forgiving them and releasing that, you may find you're just not affected anymore by how they act back to you. You may also need to make the decision to say, I forgive you, but I can't have you in my life anymore, right? If it's that big, and with my ex it was, right? It's, I forgive you. I hope you lead a wonderful life. And there were some other reasons, like, as we were trying to figure things out, as we were working together, and towards the end, it became apparent that one of the problems was that she just really didn't want the same lifestyle that I wanted. That's not her fault. And so we had other reasons to separate, where it's like, look, we're just not compatible like we thought we were. Like, you want a different life. Like, I want to be, honestly, what I really want to do is next year be buying an RV and just traveling around the world, or around the US, just like traveling and checking out places, and like just me and Oberyn, and just, like having a blast, like go hang out and check out new places and meet new people and all sorts of shit. And she wants to just have like a small apartment, and she goes and works at 8 to 5, comes home and watches TV, after eating dinner, falls asleep on the couch, and gets up and wants the security and the routine and the same thing every day. And that doesn't work for me in my life. So there were other reasons there, but at the end of the day, it was still, I did all this work and I forgave you. I'm not going to give you the chance to hurt me again like that. Like, I'm still going to hold you accountable that you did this, and as much as I'm over it and past it, like, why would I do that? Why would I do that anymore? Why would I, like, just because I forgave you doesn't mean I have to tie myself to you. It doesn't mean that I'm required to keep you in my life. It doesn't mean I'm required to be in any situation where I could allow you to do that again. Now, that might mean you have to make some really hard choices, though. That might mean you have to cut someone out of your life. That might mean you could also make a decision and say, depending on what it is, if they hurt you really bad once, maybe it's, I will forgive you, but that is, you ever do this again, and like, I'm just never going to talk to you again. Every situation is different. It's kind of hard to say what the severity is and what the offense is and how they're hurting you. My dad would hurt me just because we'd get into these calls, and so by me forgiving him and changing how I interacted with him, and just, again, accepting that it was my responsibility and my decision how I thought about it. Right? So when he came in at me like that again, I'm just going to choose to not be affected by this because I've forgiven you. I've gotten new information now. You can't hurt me that way anymore. Right? So even if he tried, he couldn't. Not that he was ever trying to be that way. It just was his way of being, and that's okay. I mean, it'd be better if it wasn't, but, you know, again, recognizing that no one tries to wake up in the morning and be an asshole, and that's just him and his trauma and how he works, and, like, I can't hold it against him for just kind of defaulting that way and kind of being that way from his own experiences. But if it's a situation where, but that's a situation where it's just a verbal thing and not like a betrayal thing. And so I can more easily choose to decide how I'm going to respond in that moment and if I'm going to be hurt by it or not. If it's a situation where, like, you're in an abusive relationship, yeah, you forgive them, but you still need to get the fuck out of the abusive relationship. Like, there's no... Forgiving someone does not mean you are obligated to stay in a bad or toxic situation. The only thing forgiveness means is I am going to choose to no longer be affected by this, and I'm going to let it go and move on for my sake. So I am no longer a victim. I move from victim to survivor, and ideally to thriver. Because if you forgive and get the really good lessons that you should have gotten, not the misinformation from the victimization, but you change it, it is the case that you can then look at how you overcame it all and go back and go, okay, this all worked to my benefit because I learned these lessons and now I'm that much stronger and I'm going to carry that strength and everything forward. Now, you said it's your brother who steals from you, lies constantly, etc. You can forgive him. However, you may need to cut that off. I know that's awful to say. Sometimes people with toxic family members who, like, you can forgive them, but if they are not really changing and they are not sorry and they're just doing the same things, you can let it go, but you do not have to accept that in your life any longer. And you may have to make really hard decisions to not accept that in your life any longer. And say, look, I will forgive you, but if you do this again, especially, like, it might not be fair to not lay this out and to just say, I'm cutting you out without laying it out and giving one final chance because it's a brother. It's not exactly just someone you work with or something like that, you know? But because it's a brother, I don't want to get into your details that I know a little bit about without you actually saying them in the chat right now. But I know, for example, that this situation may arrive very soon, right? And it may be the case where you have to go, look, this is what it's been for a long time. I can no longer accept this in my life. So you don't get to steal from me anymore. You don't get to lie to me any longer. If you want a relationship with me, what is more important? If you can actually get your shit together here, I could possibly work on forgiving you. But if we're going to continue this relationship, you have to show that you are sorry and apologetic and on your end trying to come and make it work too. Because I've accepted you lying and cheating, so you haven't been the one trying. I've been the one trying here. And I will try and forgive you going forward. But if you're just going to keep doing this, I'm sorry, but I need to look out for myself. I will work on forgiving you, and I will wish you the best in life, but I'm no longer going to accept you dragging me down. I'm no longer going to, indirectly enable you. We're still holding people accountable for their actions. They are still responsible. And that's hard, I'm not saying it's not hard, because, you know, that is someone who, it's a family member, right? And it may be one of the only people you had. But there comes a point where you still have to decide, is this, am I going to allow this person to drag me down any longer? You know, like, admittedly, she wasn't a family member, but in regards to my ex, like, by the time we finally separated, it was 9, what was it? 9 years total, really, more or less. I think maybe 8, somewhere between 8 and 9, and it's a little fuzzy because, like, our divorce took longer and a whole bunch of other stuff, and COVID got in the way. But let's, depending on exactly when you want to call it, between when we first started talking, or when we first started dating, or when this or that, you know, somewhere between 8 to 9 years. But I did just say, this was the only person in my life ever that I felt connected with, that I could trust, that I could love, that I could rely on. I was alone. And to be fair, my mom is cool. You know, but quite frankly, being a problem child as a teenager, those were some tumultuous years. And we're cool now, and she's always stuck by me, but, like, we didn't have this, like, super awesome, loving, you know, relationship when I was a teenager. So growing up and all that, I really didn't have anyone. Then I got with ex number 1. That was a fucking train wreck. So this was the one person who I wasn't alone because they existed. And after everything, and after all the pain, and even forgiving and wishing them the best, and I still love them in the sense that I want them to have a phenomenal life, and I truly wish them the best. I still had to cut out the one person from my life who I ever didn't, the only person who made me not feel alone. And that sucks. But I hope that me sitting here and talking shows that it can be okay if you do that. Obviously, she's not a brother. I didn't grow up with her. But it was still close to a decade, and it was still the most significant person in my life. And it is the case where we've had to talk to finalize divorce and stuff like that, but it's like, I wish you the best, but, like, we can't be Facebook friends, we can't be this, we can't, like, you need to go live your life, because I just can't accept what you did. I can't, as much as I wanted to, trust me, I wanted to forgive her so badly and see if there was a way that we could move on. And at the end of the day, we couldn't. And I know some people who are masters at forgiveness, and they still got a divorce because it was like, I just, no, this, I don't want this to be part of my story with the person I'm with. You betrayed me. I can forgive you. I can move on in life. But that is something that's too big, that even if I can forgive you, it doesn't mean I'm going to accept it going forward in my life. And that's okay. And I think the same goes with toxic family members. Sometimes you have narcissistic parents, you know, and there's a million stories out there of kids who unfortunately have to go, you're my mom and this sucks, but you are narcissistic and you drag me down. You're hurting my life. I will find ways to forgive you. I will wish you the best, but I can't do this anymore. I cannot have you be ruining my life. So my heart goes out to you, really. If that's where it has to go. I hope it doesn't. I hope that with everything possibly being laid out on the line, and I don't want to just give you such general advice through a video without the exact specifics, but I also don't want to say exact specifics to the entire internet. But it may be the case where you just have to have a really serious discussion and lay out what the stakes are as a starting point, and still work on forgiving them. But if they can't look at those stakes and recognize that you're more important than stealing from you and all that kind of stuff, then they've told you something. And at that point, you have to recognize your own importance and that you can't accept that anymore for your own sake. You're welcome. I hope that helped. I hope this whole forgiveness stream helped for anyone who's been watching. It's been it's been a trip for me. I think he's starting to recognize that maybe it's almost time to close up. Also, for anyone watching, please let me know if anything is off with the music or the mic. Know that I had to move it, anything like that. I can kind of hear that music is playing, but I just kind of have it really turned down so I can hear myself think. Yeah, if it's a little too loud or something, I can fuck with that stuff. If it's bothering you, just let me know. And also, I'm going to take the time again, just real fast before we end, to say, if you don't follow me already, I'd really appreciate it if you could, because it doesn't really hurt you, and it helps me, because I need to get to like 50 people to become an affiliate of Twitch or something like that. So, that'd be awesome if you could. If you enjoy this, if you got something out of it, if you could hit the follow button, that would be great, and I'd be very, very thankful and grateful. It's about 2 hours. You can watch the dog drink some water. I think that's probably a good place to stop, I am noticing that the color is a little off, maybe because I have a candle lit back there or something, or these lights are on like cold white. I shouldn't be so orange. Maybe I'll have to solve that another day or on the next one. But tomorrow I'll be streaming 3 o'clock Eastern, or noon Pacific time, for 2 hours. I'm not even sure what I'm going to talk about. We're going to find out tomorrow. And then Thursday night we'll be back at this time. And so this is the new schedule, so that I do 2 nights and 1 during the day. And hopefully more people can check it out live at night. Not have to watch the VODs. Although maybe some of you prefer that, because you could just, put it on 2 times speed or something if you're watching on YouTube or whatever. But again, if you would please follow, join the Discord. That's also really good if you're not already in there. The link is down below. You could also find the link to the YouTube in case you don't get to watch these live. They do get uploaded over onto YouTube, and then you can have better playback usually than Twitch gives you. And also they're going to be there forever, whereas Twitch is only going to be for like 60 days or something like that. So, but I'm going to keep doing this for quite a while. So, probably, hopefully longer than 60 days. What else? I think that's about it for tonight. So I hope that everyone has an awesome night. I'm gonna go probably let this little guy out. See, he's staring at me, something's up. His ears just popped up. Hi, buddy. Come here. Yeah, we're gonna go outside. That's about it. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I will hopefully see you all tomorrow. Any questions, go on Discord and DM me. It's Everclear #0001. Made it real easy. You can go into the Discord and find me. I'll be the administrator of that server, and just right click and hit message. You can get in touch with me that way. You can suggest things either in the Discord channel or directly to me. You can ask me questions. You can give me feedback. Whatever you want to do. And thank you to all of you who have given me feedback again, or shared your stories, or whatever else. I really appreciate it. So I think this is a good place to end. I will see you all tomorrow. Have a wonderful night, everyone. Take care.